Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We're Baltimore positively here at Gertrude's at the BMA. It is it's always a great day to be here. Certainly the Amy Sherrill exhibit's been amazing. We're here to promote No Mean City, Baltimore 1966. Dan Roderick's My Life with Friends doing a show upstairs here. Yes, there's a theater here. But we're at Gertrude's where I had a ridiculously delicious catfish lunch with grits, cheese grits, and collard greens, and these little shrimpies on there. They were like a shrimp creole. It was delicious. We're here on behalf of the Maryland Lottery. I have Harlem Globetrotter scratch-offs to give away. Ron Cassie's my guest. He's the senior editor. I keep wanting to call you executive editor, senior editor of Baltimore Magazine. Be more. How many years for Baltimore Magazine? 80?
For me?
What year did it come out? 70-something, 80-something? How many years has it been?
For the magazine itself? Yeah. Oh, no, we're coming up on like our 120th anniversary. This is the longest running city regional magazine.
I didn't know about it until the
country.
80s.
In the country.
You know what would be neat? It would be to archive stuff from the 60s, 70s, 50s, 40s. And I've never seen what it looked like.
I'll suggest you keep an eye out. Keep an eye out.
I did not know this.
Maybe something in the works along the lines.
Well, I'm glad I asked about that because
from time to time we'll post old covers.
Okay.
And they're just awesome. I mean, especially when you go back to the 60s.
Was it look more like Life
70s.
Magazine or Time? Did it
you get
look
a little
more
bit
that
of
way?
There's one of my favorites is all the cars that we import right at the Port of Baltimore. There's a great old photograph of VW Beetles down at the Inner Harbor from like the 1960s, right? VW Beetles, just thousands of them at the Port of Baltimore.
When they were new.
When they were new, being imported.
Nobody bought one yet.
Because now you go,
they're like Cabbage Patch dolls. Everybody wanted one, right?
But all the cars that we import into the Port of Baltimore, right? It's a huge. We were like one of the biggest importers of cars.
I found
in the
that
world.
out when the Key Bridge went down. Yes.
Right. So, but when you go back and you see the VW Beetles, the different colors and everything, it's really fun.
Well, the reason I ask is, I'm promoting the 66 thing.
Yeah.
And you're writing about 66 this month in Baltimore Magazine,
right?
I didn't know that Baltimore Magazine existed in 66, right?
Yeah.
Right. So the fact that you're doing sort of an archival piece on a Baltimore time capsule. Now, yours was more about the baseball team, or is it more like Dan's show, which is more about race and integration and the problems?
I haven't seen Dan's show, obviously. This story has been on our storyboard for at least a year. I mean, I've wanted to do this story for a long time. I guess it's not a surprise that I guess like Dan and I have been around for a long time, baseball fans, that you realize how meaningful 66 was, the acquisition of the trade for Frank Robinson. Shout out and Bull Durham, remember? Annie Savoy, Susan Sarandon's character, right?
And shout out to Pete Alonso, who is the latter day Frank Robinson.
Well, maybe, but this culturally is not going to have the same impact. I'm a big polar bear fan, but culturally not going to have a big impact. But yeah, this story's been on the board for a long time. I mean, during COVID, I live tweeted the 1970 season, like game by game. Baseball had been canceled, so I created an anonymous Twitter account. And by the end of the season, I had like 6,000 followers. I tweeted like a sports writer would.
I had a burner account.
I had a burner account. I miss baseball so much. Right? I'm at home by myself.
Jeez, why aren't you in Sarasota today?
I was live tweeting every game and anonymously. The account still exists. But partly from that, I did so much research into the Orioles, right? So 1970, not 1966. I did so much research because you're like, well, whatever happened to Kurt Plevry or Steve Barber
or Luis Aparicio?
Yeah, you dig back. When did they acquire this guy? And one thing you realize is how much like injuries are a part of the game. Like how many young guys come up promising, make a contribution, and then they're forgotten because they're just out of baseball in 2 or 3 years. Back then, especially. But
Luke Jones brought up Nolan Reimold to me last week, so that came up.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking there's a guy there.
Yeah. Well, Wally Bunker is we'll talk about 66. He's the quintessential. I mean, he was. Mickey Mantle said he's one of the toughest guys Mickey Mantle ever faced, and he's like out of baseball. Like he's really washed up at like 21.
Well, the Steve Dalkowski story is also legendary.
Well, that's who Bull Durham is based on,
right?
That's right because the guy who wrote who did the movie Shelton was an Oriole farmhand.
There was a Dalkowski book that came out a couple years ago.
It was good.
I had the guy on that wrote it.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, but 66 is I tried to meld the baseball with the cultural stuff, because Frank Robinson was Baltimore Orioles really first black superstar, right? First black player. Bob Boyd had played first base for a couple of years, but he comes to Baltimore. And it's almost 20 years, 19 years after Jackie Robinson. And Frank had played here in the 50s and faced the racism and segregation.
And there were only 3 black players on the 66 team. I learned that from Vanessa and Chris earlier. Yeah,
right. And they were young. I mean, Paul Blair and now the third guy's going to escape me. But, he broke ground. And listen, in 1966, Frank Robinson famously, his family had trouble buying a home in Baltimore. There was legal housing segregation. He was threatening to leave the Orioles down in spring training, come back. His wife Barbara was ready to move back to California. They couldn't find a home. The Orioles had to step in. They ended up renting a house in Ashburton. So faced tremendous segregation. He and Paul Blair couldn't get a drink or go out to eat in every restaurant in Baltimore in 1966. Right. Meanwhile, as fans are cheering on the World Series, the guy most responsible for it, Frank Robinson, can't go out and get a drink in any bar, or get a dinner in any restaurant, or buy a house in any neighborhood. So it's really a seminal moment in the city's history. The Afro-American, I brought one of my
show and tell. Ron
show
Cassie,
and tell. I brought my biography of autobiography of Sam Lacey.
Sam Lacey, sure.
From the Afro-American, Sam Lacey at the Afro-American Hall of Fame baseball sports writer, the NAACP.
Sam was in the press box all the time when I was a young person, and I didn't spend a whole lot of time. I should have spent more time.
Bent his ear, get some oral history with him. But he was pushing.
I was too dumb.
He was pushing for the Orioles to sign black ball players. The NAACP was local civil rights organizations. Baltimore was a Colts town in '66, and they had Lenny Moore, Jim Parker. Would get John Mackey, Willie Richardson, a bunch of other black ball players. Buddy Young was there. And the Orioles had nobody. And baseball was, less so today it is in America, but then baseball was the America's game.
Yeah, sure.
And I interviewed for my story Reverend Alvin Hathaway, who went to City College and worked at Memorial Stadium.
Love the Rev.
Right. Well, he was at the game when Frank Robinson hits a home run out of the stadium.
My parents were there. Mother's Day.
Mother's Day
68.
It was sold out. 66.
66, sorry.
It was sold out because, Frank was new. I mean, it was...
68 was year he was hurt, I think, yeah.
It was, a huge moment for that year. But, Reverend Hathaway was in high school. He dropped his box of popcorn. He was selling popcorn.
Oh.
And it just tumbled out, the whole tray.
When I get him on, I'm going to have to talk to him about that.
Dropped the whole tray. Everybody turned their head. But, he was saying that when they got Frank, a home run hitter, and you coupled him with Paul Blair, exciting, Gold Glover. Now African Americans in the city were becoming attentive to the Orioles, and the Orioles, it's documented. I mean, it's in our story. They were looking for a black ball player to sign. They were losing. At that point, Baltimore was the 6th biggest city in the country.
Well, Hofberger had also been through the Holocaust with his family and stuff. From what my understanding is that there was a real understanding about management to be. I hate the word liberal. It's so dumb what has been done to the word liberal, but I guess that would be the word.
Well,
at that time,
I think it was a business
integrated.
It was a business decision. The city is the 6th largest in the country. 35 to 40% are African American, yet they don't have any black ball players. And this is long after Jackie Robinson, and so they wanted that audience. They wanted to appeal to the customers, and they were looking to sign a superstar at the same time. So it wasn't.
And they're also looking to find great players.
Also looking to find great players. So you right? Yeah. I mean, we know why the National League dominated the 60s in baseball, right?
Willie Mays, Willie McCullough. Just give it through the list.
Henry Aaron, Roberto Clemente, Manny Sanguilla. Because on the heels of Jackie Robinson, the National League moved first to sign black players. Orlando Cepeda, Latino ball players, black and Latino players from Cuba, Rico Cardi, Vita Pinson. We know all the great players. Willie McCovey's, Ernie Banks.
Dickie Allen.
Dick Allen with Philadelphia, who went through a horrific experience there. Reggie Jackson has talked about the racism he faced, like Frank Robinson did when he was in the minor leagues. In Utah, which was very segregated, the Mormon Church had a really backwards view of black Americans, individuals, thought they were inferior. And then he went to Columbia, South Carolina, which Frank Robinson says, and one more.
Got a Frank book. Hold on. My Life in Baseball. Look at that with that Indians gear on. Look at that in the 70s.
First black manager in baseball.
Of course.
But he writes about how, Columbia, South Carolina was an improvement on Ogden, Utah in terms of race relations. That's how tough Utah was then. And one of the interesting things I think about Frank Robinson, I just share a couple of books I read for our story, but if people are interested in baseball, both of these books, Fighting for Fairness, Sam Lacey, is it on there?
It's over here. The camera's over here.
Oh, there it is. There it is. And Frank Robinson's autobiography are both great reads, great baseball reads for a fan. But Frank becomes the first black manager, and he was every bit the kind of ball player. When he retires, he's fourth all time in home runs. That's Brooks, Boog,
660.
Brooks 586.
586. 660 was Willie Mays. Sorry,
Brooks, Boog, Jim Palmer all say he's the best player they ever saw. Now they didn't see much of Aaron and Mays because they're in a different league then, but
All-Star games.
All-Star games. But Frank was extraordinary player, extraordinary acquisition. You just can't say enough about his impact. And
so your story's in the April or May?
It'll be the April issue. It'll come out in usually comes out. We do a preview for this baseball season. It comes out at the end. It'll be in newsstands like the end of March.
Okay,
end of
soon.
This month. Yeah,
and if you subscribe, as you should,
you get it earlier. Yeah,
you get a little earlier. Ron Cassie's here. He is the senior editor at Baltimore Magazine. There's a million things you and I've talked about. Renaissance of the city, and we talked about travel, and you riding your bike places, and I get Max on. We talk movies in Baltimore, different things like that. The baseball side, I know you're a baseball historian, and quite frankly, this time of year, a little oxygen to talk about the season, the offseason. You already mentioned you love the polar bear. I haven't had you on since this happened. And I have you on maybe twice a year, and we wind up inevitably talking about baseball and winding up moving into some weird social issue or something like that, or Trump or something. I want to stay on baseball with you a little bit and get your vibe on this because the Orioles have been through this tumultuous couple of years now, right? Ownership change, manager change, leadership change, down 500,000 customers last year, the television network, Masson being split up now, and maybe labor stoppage, right, coming up in 9 months, right? That's at the top of my list all the time. Where are you on the baseball? You're a pure baseball fan. The Pete Alonso thing, this has been good for the Orioles, I think they got a good guy. He seems like a decent human. You're already a fan of his. Now, whether he's going to hit 40 home runs, I don't know, but I check off on the effort, if that matters. And I couldn't always do that. I could never do that with Angelos almost, right? They never looked like they were really trying all that hard. They look like they bought a $19 million starter in February. That's good. That's an investment. The Angelos didn't buy $19 million pitchers in February.
Yeah. You're talking about Chris Bassett?
Yes.
Yeah, Chris Bassett used to play for the Mets too. So I can tie Frank Robinson to my New York Mets. I can meld these two because I was born in North Jersey. My dad was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan, so I was 5, turning 6 when the Orioles and Mets met.
You were a Mets 69. Fan out of defiance for the Brooklyn Dodgers, basically.
Well, that's who.
And anti-Yankee.
Nobody could root. Nobody was a Brooklyn Dodger fan or New York Giants fan, right? Could root for the Yankees.
Okay, so this is the same thing when I lost the Colts. We were never going to root for that team in Washington that wears burgundy and gold.
No.
It just was, I got you.
58, my dad's in high school when the Dodgers go, senior year, when they go to Los Angeles, and he forswears off baseball for like the rest of his life. But then he has a kid who likes baseball, and so we all adopted the Mets.
And they lost 150 games in 62, and next thing
the Mets had the Brooklyn Dodgers and Giants colors. That's where the blue and orange comes from. But this is a long way of saying that, like, I've always followed the Orioles because I go back to that 69 World Series.
How old were you then?
Well, I turned 6 shortly afterwards. But I was the kid who at 3 years old was watching the whole games with his dad and grandpa. I was a kid at 5 who was throwing baseballs.
I'm the same kid, but I was just 4 years behind you. I was born in 68.
Yeah, so
you were born in 63?
Yeah.
All right, I'm 60. I'm 5 years behind you. Okay, go ahead.
So
I was more Rusty Staub.
Yeah, that's 73, like that era. I mean,
Les Orange.
My cousin Dave, I would be in the street. I'd play first base in the manhole cover.
You were at Crane
He played shortstop. Yeah, I was left-handed, so I got first base. Don Clendenin, and he was Buddy Harrelson, and so. But I've followed the Orioles forever. But
I wanted to be Felix Millan in '73, but I'm going to choke up.
Well, Tommy,
you spent time with
speaking of early
guys,
black ball players, Tommy Agee and Cleon Jones were friends who played left field and center field. They grew up together in Alabama. and Mobile, Alabama, and they were like that generation. This is what I was going to mention
Mobile,
about Frank.
Alabama, and Hank was there.
One thing about Frank Robinson, I'll get to the polar bear in 1 second if I can just say this. One thing about Frank Robinson was Jackie Robinson kind of had a silently and was venerated for silently taking the abuse that he took. Frank Robinson was not a turn-the-other-cheek ball player. They were, emancipated by then. He slid hard with his spikes up. He got into fights on the field. He leaned over the
He
plate.
ran the kangaroo court. He was a leader.
Yeah. I mean, he led the National League in hit by pitch 6 out of his 10 years there. I mean, he was a fierce player. As it was ever a legendary competitor. So I'm going to jump gears. This isn't this is a non sequitur, I guess, to the polar bear. Watching him play for the Mets, which I have the MLB app to watch the Mets, and I get Masson to watch the Orioles.
But you are a bigger Mets fan, though.
No, it's right down the middle.
Okay.
I watch them both, and I'll say this: who's ever having the better year, I'll probably watch a little bit more on. But practically watching a game a night, one of them for sure.
Okay,
and I'm following. I'm on everything. No, I mean,
I won't bother you between 7 and 11 on summer nights.
The last 35,
let's have beer.
Last 35, 40 years, I've been to 100 Orioles games. I've been to like 3 Mets games.
Okay, all right.
So, but we do watch the polar bear religiously. I've got a lot of family. My brother Chris is.
That was a big day when he signed
bear.
here. Then, right? It was a big day for you.
I mean, the emotions. I mean, I couldn't handle it. You're a Mets fan. You're just wrecked. I mean, how am I supposed to feel about it?
Mets
the
fan.
one?
He is.
But they steal. Why did the one team have to steal and be the Orioles? Do you know what I mean? It breaks your heart. And I'm glad I get to see him play. I'm glad the Orioles got him. But you're like,
he was going to leave anyway.
Why didn't the Mets sign him? I mean, this is the
owner didn't have
so
enough
here's
money.
the Frank Robinson connection. He's like the same age, right? He's like leading the NL in homers. Frank Robinson was hit like 33 homers in a pitcher-dominated era, 296. And Bill DeWitt, who was the owner of the Reds at the time, says he's not a young 30. Not a young 30. That's the famous quote. Little fire in Frank. He won the Triple Crown in '66, but in a different jersey. So I don't know why the Mets didn't sign the polar bear. He had a huge year last year. He had a bigger year than Juan Soto. And from beginning to end, he carried the Mets.
So you
and
love this
he's a joy
acquisition.
to watch. He's a joy to watch. He loves him and Francisco Lindor are two of the most fun players to watch in sport.
I love Frankie Lindor.
They're unbelievable to watch. They're great in the interviews. They're great after the game. They're team guys. I mean, Alonso spent his career there. I don't know how the Mets say, that we can't pay him, but the Orioles can afford to pay him. That makes no sense to me. But that said, I'm glad he's here. I'll see him more. I hope he hits 40 home runs. Camden Yard's not necessarily a right-handed hitter's-friendly park still. It's about average now as a ballpark, but it doesn't matter for him. I mean, Citi Field wasn't a home run hitter's park either. And I think what Polar Bear will do, Pete Alonso for the Orioles, that Frank Robinson did, was you just put him in there and you just bat him fourth every day, and it takes the heat off everybody else. He's the lightning rod. He's the guy they've got to pitch around. They don't want to walk the guy in front of them. They don't want to see him come up in dangerous situations. They don't want to walk Alonso if you've got somebody behind him because now you've got 2 or 3 guys on base. He's the guy in the clubhouse that how it is. Reporters.
I knew I was going to get pissed off Mets fan and happy Oriole fan all in one.
I'm a jumble of emotions. I can't sort it out. But when reporters go into the locker room, and you've been there, they tend to go to like an Adam Jones. There's usually one veteran ball player that they go to a lot. It happens in the season, right? And I think it takes some of the heat off the other guys. And Pete Alonso is also that guy. There's no pressure on Gunnar to be the spokesman for the team. Pete Alonso, as more years
and he's being paid to be that at this point.
He's being paid to be that. He's being and that I think it's one of those things like in sports. I think in a lineup you put a guy in and the other pieces seem to fall into place. Nobody else. Adley doesn't have to hit home runs. Just get him on base. Are
they a playoff team in your mind right now? I mean, I'm scuffling with Kittredge going down earlier and Westberg and Holiday. I mean, I'm the guy that fought with Luke 4 weeks ago, before the injuries got the Blaze Alexander deal that we didn't understand at the moment when they gave bullpen away for that. And at that moment, their over or under, and I looked it up, and it depends on where you are in Vegas, was 86.5 to 89. That was the over or under. And I said to Luke, I'm like, I'll bet the over. I'll take the over in 89. I'll take 91. I'm okay with that. When they signed Bassett, when it feels like Rodgers and now you see Bradish, they look like they're at least sharp enough. This whole World Baseball Classic thing is going to be weird for all of these teams splitting off. And I thought they don't have to play the Yankees and the Reds. They say, well, the division's loaded. Yeah, but they don't play each other like they used to in a way where that would really matter and beat them down.
Yeah.
So for that, I looked at it and said, all right, they'll have a bounce-back year. They have a new manager. Seems like they've signed some players. They've addressed some needs. Even the Ward thing for Rodriguez didn't make as much sense to me at the moment as it probably will. So I'm good with their offseason, but apparently I'm more optimistic than a lot of people are. I mean, when I talk to other people, they're like, yeah, come see, come sell. We'll see. Yeah, well, wait.
I think they'll compete for a playoff spot. I hope. I think 90 wins, like you said, is probably the top end.
You think
wild
top end?
card. About that, right? I think they got.
See, I think Henderson could hit 35 home runs, and Alonso could hit 35 home runs, and Rogers could make 28 starts, and Bradish could,
Bassett's great. I like Bassett is another guy that takes the ball.
They have enough pieces here, and young players, the Holidays, the Westbergs, the Kausers. I don't call Rutschman young anymore, but he's a friggin' 1-1. So, I mean, there is a level of productivity that I'm still waiting for that light to go on for him and for him to be healthy. But health has been daunting for them the last couple of years in a lot of ways.
I think Westberg and Holiday, that's a little why I'm cautious. They're going to miss time. They're not going to come back and be themselves.
I thought there was 1,000 great prime at-bats they were going to get this year from two aspiring all-star to Hall of Very good players that I'm not sure we're going to get 600 at-bats out of the two of them this year that are going to be of quality. And that's just me. And especially Westberg, we might not get anything out of him.
And I really like Westberg as a ball player. I think he's just a throwback kind of gamer. You can put him anywhere in the lineup, put him anywhere in the infield. He's a guy who makes great contact. He's not a strikeout guy. He's going to get a runner in from third. He's going to move a guy along. I think it's tough with the injuries, and I think I'm not a huge Colton Cowser guy. I haven't seen him hit high, good enough average anymore. I think one thing, talking about Frank Robinson and Brooks and Boog and those guys also hit for average. Frank hit 296 the year before he came here.
We're in a different era with strikeouts and all, I mean, literally, right?
Yeah, but Frank was in a pitcher-dominated era. Those ERAs, that's when Bob Gibson was posting like a 1.19 ERA in the 60s. That was a pitching-dominated era. After 68, they lowered the mound. They were so dominant.
Well, I mean, Tiant and Son Sam and all that. So, yeah.
So he hits 49 home runs in 66 for the Orioles, 319. 296, he considered a down year with the Reds. And he was a home run hitter. And the only reason I bring this up is I think when guys don't hit for average, it gets tough when you get against the better pitching in the playoffs, because you're not going to get enough hits off the top pitchers. If you're only batting 240, but you're hitting a lot of home runs, well, that batting average is going to slip further when you get against the number one or two pitcher on the staff. It's going to slip further in the playoffs when you're facing the best bullpens. And if you're not hitting for average, you're kind of not hitting. It's not to get through a season and hit 235. But you hit 30 home runs, you drove in a lot of runs.
You're making a lot of outs in key situations.
You're making a lot of outs. And it's going to get worse in the playoffs and against the better teams. It's going to get harder. So guys who hit for an average, I have a lot more confidence in. So I think, Cowser is not young anymore. Westberg is not young anymore. Holiday certainly is. Gunnar certainly is, superstar potential. I mean, you just stand next to Gunnar Henderson, and you can see a guy who could play free safety in the NFL. I mean, he just is that kind of physique and natural power and grace and speed.
We'll see if Kobe Mayo can play third base too.
We'll see if Kobe Mayo. There's questions, but I love Bassett. I love the pickup of a veteran starter, like you said.
Well, Ron Cassie's here. I'm choking to death. It's Baltimore Magazine, and he is the executive. I keep wanting to say senior editor, doing a 1966 piece. What else is going on with the magazine as we get into? You doing more baseball this summer or no?
We have a couple.
Gonna welcome Craig Albernaz. We doing that one yet?
Probably when the season starts, at least for our website. We have a couple little smaller baseball stories, I think, coming into print. We try to pick our spots, I think, in the magazine.
Well, you'd write all baseball every month if you could. from March through October.
I told Jim Henneman, our old friend, who I went to some Oriole games with, that I would love to be an Orioles beat writer for like a year, just to do that whole thing for a year, to really get the ins and outs and the ebb and flow from spring training all the way to the end. I don't know that I'd want to do it like longer than that, like stay in it longer, but I for a year I think it would be.
I ran around with them for 25 years till they threw me out, and it's all good. I've been okay. I'm in the 20th anniversary of being thrown out now, after being credentialed for 23 years. How about that?
I will say that the Orioles are very gracious with us. That when they have made the playoffs, they get us press passes and a photographer.
They told me don't have room in the press box because of you.
For opening day.
I can only laugh about it. It's not funny. It's actually cruel and weird. But the new ownership, you bought in that they know what they're doing. I've had a lot of conversations on and off the air about Katie Griggs, who I've interacted with now enough for her to tell me I'm not a real media member. But they lost attendance last year, the television thing, the Birdland memberships, the subscription side of subscribing to apps and who's more want to do that. You're a baseball guy. I'm a baseball guy. We're going to do. But the people that aren't, there's not a real invitation to let them in. And there was a headline. I shared this today. I actually took a screenshot of it, and I shared it in The Athletic about baseball doing everything it can do to be not as good and fan-friendly as it could be.
Yeah.
Here it is, The Athletic. MLB's been revitalized by rule changes, but according to our readers, not everything about the fan experience has gotten better. No league has actively made it more difficult to watch their games than Major League Baseball over the last 10 years. It discourages fans from tuning in. That's just a fan comment, but it's not something I'm not unfamiliar with on a Friday night when I'm in Toronto and the game's on Apple TV and I can't even watch the game.
Yeah.
So there is a point where who's running the business and then this work stoppage thing that you're familiar with, I'm familiar with, we're more familiar with than most fans because we're journalist kind of guys and study this and read Lords of the Realm and all of that, which I'm sure you have. These new guys, do they have a strategy for a work stoppage? Do they have a real strategy for what the little city around Camden Yards and their little battery that they're trying to siphon money in? I don't sense anything from a media perspective, fan perspective, not even on their own website where they have people giving them foot rubs who work for them, getting their messaging out about the messaging that we're not Peter Angelos. I hear that. The messaging that Cal Ripken's involved, okay, he's in the commercials. The messaging that we're going to give bobbleheads away and to give away, okay, great. And we get cheap beer and cheap food, blah, blah, blah. The messaging for me with the team and making people love the team and get into the soap opera and loving baseball and all the nerdity. You and Chris Reel were having nerd conversations because you were part of the nerd society that Luke's part of that they always want me to be a part of, right? The analytics groups, right?
Yeah.
What's the name of it?
Sabre, yes. Society of American Baseball Research.
Janet Marie tried to get me down for a beer.
We hung out a lot during when the convention was here.
Right. I'm saying from a baseball perspective, there's us in our own little nerdity where I mentioned Rusty Staub and Felix Millan, and you get turned on by Hank Kranepool, and then there's somebody that's never watched baseball or went away years ago, or inclined because of race, the knee, the Ravens, the league, whatever, to say, I want to be a baseball fan again and I want to come back. How much? Where's the game? How do I find it? It's on every. There's a lot of built-in things about baseball you and I accept that to get in on the soap opera, to get new, young people of color, different people, they have their work cut out for them. Above and beyond you and me.
They do. There's a lot to unpack. You bring up a lot of stuff.
And they pissed off half of us to the point where I don't want to be involved
with them
or
promote
them.
Some of it is Baltimore, some of it is
that.
baseball, some of it is Angeles. I mean, there is, I came here in like 86, right? That's when I first moved to Waverly, started walking the games at Memorial Stadium. They were not good, we had the great.
They were not good. They had Fred Lynn, though.
We had the 89 season. Fred Lynn is a wonderful guy. 89 season. Frank Robinson, the manager of the Why Not team. It was a blast, right? But all those losing seasons, like 14 in a row, the firing of John Miller, I think maybe we've talked about some of the stuff in the past. You lost a generation of
I've been on the
potential
radio
fans.
for every minute of every day of this.
Yeah, but you've lost.
I had John Miller crying in my
you
studio.
and I would
when they threw him
remember
out.
like the
It's 30 years ago,
you remember the '83 World Series, the '79 World Series, but how many people do? I mean, you lost a generation or two of fans, but not even feeling a competitive team.
Luke loves baseball his whole life. He was born 2 weeks before the World Series in '83.
Yeah.
What does he have to hang his hat on other than Cal Ripken night, a couple of the Jeffrey Mayer game, the Delman Young double, and the night I got thrown out of the press box in Arlington 2 years ago? Like, but people talk about the Delman Young double like it's the '66 World Series, and it's way far away from that. You know, if Delman Young's all you got, and the Pope showing up at Camden Yards 32 years ago,
it was, of course,
and
the Delman
Cal
Young
Ripken,
thing. The Delman,
better make some memories for people,
like
dude.
the Andino slide against the Reds.
The curse of the Andino. I was there at that night, by the way,
and I was there for Delman Young in the bleachers behind home plate. The eruption of noise and the sound was like nothing I've ever heard. And it was partly the generations of never having anything to cheer for. Like this repressed, Buck Schultz, we're back, we're here, we're going to win a playoff series. It was just an explosion of sound. But I think with the Orioles, I'm somebody that's probably going to bring in a bottle of water and my own peanuts. It's expensive to go to the ballpark. It is. And I think, I've seen, Baltimore Banner, Sun reporters tweet out, well, the attendance is down and all this stuff. Where is everybody? Well, you have all this losing trajectory where you weren't even competitive. You had COVID, no baseball. It takes more than one season of hitting the playoffs to develop a fan base. It's not just like, okay, where is everybody? It takes a long time, a dedicated ownership. It takes being competitive, kind of year in and year out, fielding a good team, developing
it. Takes a presence,
like
a real presence.
Takes a real presence.
And Larry Lucchino, and you and I didn't even notice that in the 80s. And there was a presence there that got Camden Yards built that created that Oriole magic, that created that Why Not season, that made it feel like to a Jersey guy to come down here to adopt the Orioles and you felt like you could be a part of it. I don't know that's even on the menu anymore for professional sports. That you're really going to be a part of it. You're going to be a gambler on it. You're going to be a customer.
I think you're right.
You're a customer. You're a number. You're not a fan.
I am. And this is not just baseball. I've heard Charles Barkley complaining. He's on the road at a hotel. He can't find the NBA game because, it's on TNT. Where is it? NBC. It's on Peacock. Where am I finding the game? It's the same in baseball. The Orioles on Masson. They're on Fox. They're on ESPN.
There's
on Apple
arrogance
TV.
that you're just going to do whatever. You're going to wait in line 3 hours for a bobblehead and 100. I don't think they treat people well.
It's a trade-off to get
sense,
the money for these networks.
I love baseball.
As opposed to the fan. It was always a game that people went to. As opposed to just watched on TV. It was a place you went to, was affordable. That's been lost. Obviously the TV stuff. I think the biggest thing with baseball, you mentioned the work stoppage. And by the way, Curt Flood, give him a shout out, right? The guy who basically changed all of professional sports by challenging the baseball reserve clause in 1969, right? Black center fielder for St. Louis Cardinals. He was a Golden Glover.
The Colin Kaepernick of his era.
Hit 285, 31 years old, and the only team he could possibly resign was the Cardinals, and that launched free agency. He grew up with Frank Robinson in Oakland, by the way. So did Bill Russell. That's some game changers from the high school they went to, by the way, in sports history. Bill Russell, Frank Robinson, and Curt Flood. But I think where baseball has failed compared to football and basketball is you do need, right? You do need some type of market, some type of revenue sharing stream that can put teams on the same playing field competitively, or at least close. I don't think we can just let.
See, everybody's going to take a side on this. You're taking the owner's side in this now.
I want to say with the ball players. For the ball players, I'm not saying like
the players don't want a salary cap, and that's what you're proposing. Literally. That's going to be the conversation amongst fans in the offseason is I want it to feel like the Packers and the Giants do in football.
Yes.
And that means the players are going to lose the battle, or I don't know how that would always be a loss for them.
It doesn't seem to be that the NBA players or NFL players' salaries are taking a huge hit.
You better talk to this Meyer guy that just took over for the Clark guy, because I talked to the Don Fear guys and the Marvin Millers, and it's going to be a war. The Bryce. By the way, your guy Bassett's in on this, right? He's one of the big union guys.
Yeah.
That's here, as well as Bryce Harper and whatnot. So, as much as I want to talk about what's on the field, and you and I will do that all summer, this is going to be percolating. The labor is going to be percolating.
Yeah, it's as a monopoly, and you're a fan. It's like we want to see the best product and grow the game. And
next guests.
Oh, great.
No, so I'm going to wrap up with you.
Okay, good. Not only good, I love Ann Mannix from the BMA. I've been to the Amy Sherald exhibit. But I think,
I should have sat her down.
As a fan, the sport has to figure that out. You just can't have the Dodgers buy the pennant in the World Series every year. I mean, it subtracts from the game overall. I don't think it hurts the pie of the player's salary pool. Why does it necessarily do that? I think it's kind of short-sighted.
I've been through 3 strikes here, right? 4 strikes and 3 work stoppages while I've been on the air.
Yeah.
And when I make this point that is, I always call it Adam and Eve and the original sin in the Garden of Eden, is the Yankees and the Dodgers were never going to get online with any of the Pirates and the Royals.
Yeah.
And the players were never going to have it.
Nope.
And how the structure of the union is for the players, the battle drums this summer, and whether Gunnar Henderson's going to say, I'm willing to walk a picket line, when I'm in an arbitration year when I could be making $20 million this year, whatever the number is going to be. That's always the hardest part for the older guys to talk to younger guys into holding out.
Why does revenue sharing necessarily reduce the pool of salaries?
Well, you're going to have to ask
I guess the idea is that the Dodgers and Yankees just drive the bidding up so high, everybody has to go along behind them?
I think the idea is that the Pirates and the Royals, they would never have enough money to fund them in a way that they really would spend the money. And they would pocket the money the way all the owners have in baseball. The luxury tax money was a scam system set up for people like that creep down in Miami to steal all the money, right? I mean, that's really what happened. Luria, the art dealer, while I'm in an art house here, doing all that.
It's we go back to the conversation started, like 1960s baseball. The Pirates were so exciting. The San Francisco Giants.
That's what they thought in 92, too, until they stopped spending money, right?
Up until 92, they were great with Van Slyke and Bonds and Bonilla and that whole crowd. But, going back, to the Clemente, Willie Stargell, Sanguillen, Al Oliver, unbelievable hitter, that whole era, all the way through 83. And the San Francisco Giants had great teams with Cepeda and Mays and McCovey and the Alou brothers. And oh, my God.
Sure.
But we don't have that anymore.
I'm going to let you go. Hold this Frank Robinson book up one more time. I'm going to borrow that. My Life is Baseball, Frank Robinson. My Life is Ron Cassie in Baltimore Magazine, April, during the 1960s. What's on the cover?
The cover right now is Best Restaurants. So if you want to see that on the newsstands.
I got tastiness going on.
And if you want to go to April,
the
next issue, it's John Waters' 80th birthday, and Mr. Waters is on the cover. And
another benefactor of the wonderful BMA here, right?
Our good friend Max Weiss wrote the profile to go with John Waters. The cover
So
story.
Max Weiss was hanging out with John Waters?
Yeah.
I'll pay for that.
Yeah,
they
were hanging out, and we got it. The photos of John are great, and of course,
I've never met John. I've had him on my show. He did the show like 3 years ago when he did the Sex Valentine thing that he was doing.
Yeah,
and I asked him to come on, and he agreed, and he came on. It was a big deal for me. I did my hair, I shaved, having John Waters on, and I'll talk to Ann about this too because I know he's done a bunch of stuff. Ann, you want to come sit in? Come on, Ron says he knows you. I'm going to let you in here, so I'll just I'm going to go old school here and do it this way.